Sex is the life force energy that runs through us all. Can you use sexual energy for your spiritual evolution? Or perhaps for emotional healing? Is it even possible? Clinical sexologist Dr. Martha Tar Lee will explore all these and more on Eros Evolution on Om Times Radio.
The population of people I work with, so.
Great. Yeah, so that cut off for a bit just now. So thank you for sharing with us your background and how your chronic condition and disability actually led you to becoming a sexologist, and you are really well qualified. For those people who doesn't know that Dr. Major Tepper has all this accolade behind his name, and he also recently won an award. So could you tell us a little bit about that award?
I'm receiving a clinical practice award for my kind of lifetime achievement in the area of advocacy and developing curriculum, publishing in the area of sexuality and spinal cord injury. It's from the Academy of Spinal Cord Injury Professionals. So it's from the Division of Psychologists, Social Workers, and Counseling. So I think this is a big plus for the area of sexual health. You know, I've been advocating for this, as I said, for 25 years, and people are beginning to really recognize that this is an important part. And in addition to getting this award, the organization has dedicated a whole day before the conference to do a program on sexuality and spinal cord injury, and I'm proud to say a lot of the focus will be on pleasure and orgasm, not just typically on reproductive issues that might have been covered before.
And it's quite timely because right now you are doing crowdfunding for your new documentary called Making Love After Making War. So tell us what inspired you to make this documentary?
Well, I guess on my path to becoming a sexologist, I failed to mention how important sexuality was to me at 20 years old when I broke my neck and I didn't even know if I could have children. And so it was, central to my recovery and my moving forward in a very positive way. So we did know we had a big problem in our country, at least the United States, with suicides related to failed intimate relationships. So when I was working at Morehouse School of Medicine, we wanted to tackle that issue, looking at the intersection of sexual health and mental health and physical health.
Sexual, mental, and physical. And so the documentary came out of that? Or is that like a personal initiative? Yeah. Okay, so we have a break now, and we'll talk more with Dr. Mitchell Tepper after this break.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fox, host and astrologer of The Astrology Show. Each week, I'll give you access to the current transits, which are a valuable tool that provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has. Understanding the stars can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, be sure to tune in to The Astrology Show for guidance. Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
It's 6:42 p.m. Time for Steve Plotto and his son Dylan to do the dishes. They talk about everything from the yuckiness of girls to the awesomeness of his soccer team. Sometimes they don't talk at all. Then, hey, the dreaded splash fight. It's Dad o'clock, and it's the best time of the day. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Eros Evolution. This is where sexuality and spirituality meets. And in today's show, we're talking about Love After War, supporting disabled veterans with Dr. Mitchell Tepper. He is discussing with us today his new documentary, Making Love After Making War. And he's doing crowdfunding for it. You can find the crowdfunding page at loveafterwar.org. And if you are interested to find out about Dr. Mitchell Tepper's work, you can go to his website. That's drmitchelltepper.com. That's MITCHELL Tepper, TEPPER.com. And welcome back to the show, Dr. Mitchell Tepper.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sorry. I love your voice. And so, what I was beginning to ask you just before the break, what inspired you to make this documentary? And you were beginning to answer how there was this awareness that there wasn't much being discussed for veterans. Is there anything else you'd like to elaborate?
Of course, yes. Yeah. So, about 10 years ago, I was invited speak at a conference for really catastrophically or seriously injured, disabled veterans. And so this organization brought 100 plus injured folks and their families to a conference. And I was invited to speak not because I'm a veteran, because I'm a civilian, but because of my expertise in disabilities. And, me along with some colleagues did 4 separate workshops over a few days, and then we talked with people individually. When we were around the conference in the evening, we had people coming up to our room that we had just for basically informal consultation, and people were really hungry for this information. And I met some people who, over the years I kept track of and are doing well. But in 2006, when we got into this, I was beginning to say that the news was that, the majority and almost 75% of our military suicides were attributed to failed intimate relationships. And that's how important relationships are. When they're going wrong, they could be what we call the straw that breaks the camel's back. Some people are deployed and their worldview is shaken up by things that are happening. They're losing friends. If a relationship breaks up, that could be, the tipping point where people think it's no longer worth living. And so, and on the short of suicide, we knew, and we had actually documentation or reports, that failed intimate relationships also resulted in divorce, intimate partner violence. Some of that was affecting the children, homelessness. And so we thought if we could introduce sexual health care and taking care of issues around intimacy, that we could help stem the tide against suicide, divorce, and intimate partner violence. And so, and the literature said that if you came back from war with serious physical or mental disabilities, that your chances of getting one of these things was much greater than somebody who just someone who came back from war but who didn't receive an injury. So we thought, when I was at Morehouse School of Medicine, that this is a good area for us to intervene and make a real difference. So following that, we held a national conference in D.C. Called Wounded Troops and Partners Supporting Intimate Relationships. And we had the who's who there. We had, in addition to Dr. Satcher, who was a former Surgeon General of the United States, we had Dr. Richard Carmona, another Surgeon General who was a Vietnam vet whose son was a veteran. We had Bob Dole, former senator and presidential candidate who was a World War II veteran. And we had Lee Woodruff, whose husband, Bob Woodruff from ABC News, had received a very, serious head injury when he was an embedded reporter. So we had all these people up in Washington, D.C., with invited audiences from the Department of Defense, from the Veterans Administration, from the RAND Corporation, who did a lot of the research, any organization that can serve people with disabilities or advocate for or fund. So we had politicians from what we call the Hill. It was in Washington, D.C., so we had politicians that were on the Appropriations Committee. That's people who are responsible for the budget of where people get to spend money. We brought all these folks together to get this issue on the radar, and we did. And one of the things I did afterwards is help the VA set up retreats for couples who were dealing with post-traumatic stress or brain injury or physical disabilities. But another thing that happened is I was invited to write a chapter for a book called Hidden Battles on Unseen Front, Stories of American Warriors with Post-Traumatic Stress and Brain Injuries. And so I asked the editor of the series of this book to send me the stories, send me the biographies they were doing of the individual warriors or injured soldiers, with brain injury or post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was going to write a chapter called Making Love After Making War. I came up with this idea, and then I read all of these stories, and none of them had really positive endings. So I ended up writing a chapter called The Battle for Love. And, I had Making Love After Making War in my head, and I had people now over the years that I was working with that were doing very well, despite things that seemed insurmountable. And I wanted to tell their stories, and I wanted to tell their stories in a way that would give realistic hope to other people who were struggling with their relationships because of, either mental health or disability-related issues. And so, I wasn't finding funding through traditional sources. So I finally said I'm going to go out to the public, because whenever I tell people about this, they thought it was such a great idea. And I said, okay, let's go see. And I made a film. I made the first interview last year, and I used, my son is in a fraternity in college, and it's at Georgia State University, and one of his fraternity brothers is a very good up-and-coming filmmaker, and he's had a few films at the Cannes Festival, which is, very competitive. And I said, introduce me. And so with, my son, who's a photographer and who did Second Camera, and his fraternity brother, who's a director of photography and editor, and another fraternity brother who's a musician. He did sound and the soundtrack. The four of us went out, and we did the first interview, and I've been showing that around the country, and then used that as a stepping stone to begin to raise money to do more. So I put together a budget, and I did a crowdfunding campaign, and we've raised nearly, $25,000 out of the $56,000 it will take me to fly around the country with my crew and gather these stories, because a lot of that is travel, because although there are people doing well, they're not as easy to find a couple that's doing well and will speak, very openly about what's going on in their intimate life. So it's not sexually explicit, and I'm not showing any people without clothes or having sex, but they are talking about both their interpersonal relationships, about how they maintain emotional closeness and physical intimacy. And so that's not always easy. Often I get one partner who wants to talk to either the injured or not injured one, and the other one doesn't want to be on the film. But I have enough people lined up now. So, and I've raised enough money to do a few more interviews, and I will continue to raise money and look for maybe some corporate sponsors. And in addition to the documentary, which will tell these people's stories, I'm going to develop a companion website where other people can share their stories. I'll put information that's specific to different disabilities. So the first couple, the Aaron, he had stepped on a IED, an improvised explosive device, a bomb, and lost both legs, and he lost a testicle and a third. He lost some fingers, and he had brain injury. The next couple that I do, the guy, had some serious burns, over most of his body, and he was single. He was 19. Now he's 35, married, and has kids. Another person, was a woman who served and, got hit in the head with a buoy on a ship and has a brain injury. And so, I'm showing these different types of disabilities. There also might have a captain who was shot in the head and is blind. So we have all these stories. And on the website, we'll have information about how, impaired vision, how brain injury, how spinal cord injury, how burns affect sexuality. So people will go get the information that they can't find anywhere else. And then they'll have supportive groups, which they can come and talk with other people, and they'll be facilitated support groups. So I have a grand vision, and, I appreciate you having me on and letting me talk about it. And then people could go to LoveAfterWar.org and read about it and contribute if they want.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it's a grand project, like you mentioned, and so I just want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. That you said that you have already done the first interview and that you have raised $25,000 out of the $65,000 that you need.
Yes, and I want to do it.
Yeah.
I want to do
Go
at
on,
least,
sorry.
I want to try to get 5 more interviews in.
Okay. But you haven't done the interviews, and much of the funding will go towards travel expenses.
Oh, yeah, the funding I
right?
will go towards the filming and the travel.
Yeah, sure. Okay, we have a break, and we'll talk more about this after the show.
Free your mind with Om Times Radio, IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi, this is Julie Geigel.
And I'm Alicia Isaacs-House.
And I'm Catherine Glass. And we're the Psychic Angel Channelers. You can find us every week here on Om Times Radio at Angel Talk Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time.
The angels have heard your call and are here to help.
Are you ready to receive? Remember your magnificence with Angel Talk Tuesday.
There is no death, only a change of worlds. Chief Seattle. Deborah Livingston is an award-winning intuitive psychic medium whose international services include mediumship, spiritual assessment, animal communication, and spiritual mentoring. She is a published author and a trained shaman. Deborah provides evidential messages from spirit and departed loved ones. Learn more at deblivemedium.com. That's DEBLIV medium.com.
I want to thank my mommy for loving me so much,
for taking me to the doctor when I broke my foot,
for leaving me alone when I wanted to be alone.
And now, as a grown-up, I'm thankful for being able to take care of you, my dear mom, for taking you to your therapies, for understanding that sometimes you simply want to be alone.
Roles change without us noticing. That's why AARP gives you the information to provide even better care for your loved one. Visit aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Eros Evolution. This is where sexuality and spirituality meets. You are listening to this show on the Om Times Radio Network. And you can share this show with your friends by going to this link, omtimes.com/mobile. With this link, you will be able to listen to the show all with your friends, or your friends can listen to the show by going to this link. And it's very easy. You just go to this link, you can listen to the show. So you have to download any app. So that makes it really convenient for everyone concerned. We are with Dr. Mitchell Tepper today, and we're talking about Love After War, supporting disabled veterans. And he shared with us his revolutionary work that he's going to do. He's going to make a new documentary, Making Love After War. And this is all about supporting intimate relationships for injured veterans and their family. And as you know, people who go through wounds and disabilities may have difficulties, and there's not enough sexuality education in the world for able-bodied people, much less for people who are having different changes that has happened to their bodies, and so they have questions around their sexuality which isn't really answered. So in today's show so far, Dr. Mitchell Tepper started by telling us about his own experience with chronic condition and disability. He talked about how he became a sexologist, and then he talked about his work around working with veterans and what inspired him to make this documentary. So we are going to delve more into some of the unique intimacy issues that injured veterans has experienced, and Dr. Mitchell Tepper is well qualified to do this. And you can find out more about him by going to his website, drmitchelltepper.com, and also the fundraising page for this documentary called LoveAfterWar.org. That's LoveAfterWar.org. So welcome back to the show, Dr. Mitchell Tepper.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that was quite a mouthful. So what are some of the unique intimacy issues that injured veterans that you have worked with or that you're aware of? What are they dealing with?
Yes, that's a great question, because I've been working with people with similar type of disabilities, for the last 25 years. But when somebody acquires an injury or a disability related to their service, there are some unique things. First, without a disability, it's when you're in the service, you're separated, from either your family, your friends, your spouses, your loved ones, sometimes for many months on end. So without any injury, without any physical or mental injury, there's changes in dynamics every time someone leaves and comes back. And now you add the stresses of being in a different country and always being on alert. So even if you don't come back with the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress, there are still combat stress-related issues, and that people have when they come home. So when they come home, they're adjusting to being home, but in the context of high levels of stress and needing to decompress. So now add the mental health issues, which the folks I'm working with, many who have stepped on a landmine or got shot in combat, right? They were under highly stressful situations. They received either a spinal cord injury or multiple limb amputations or became blind or got burned. So they have all those things to deal with, but they also often have post-traumatic stress disorder, and many, with a combination of brain injury. So when I read these stories that I talked about earlier in this book, Hidden Battles on Unseen Fronts, and the stories of America's soldiers with traumatic brain injury and PTSD, I started to look at some of the similar issues that were really chipping away at the foundations of intimacy. So if we take my word for it, and I'm sure we could come up with different definitions of intimacy, but if I wanted to break intimacy down into some of its important components, I would say there's trust, there's safety, there's communication, there's the ability to be empathetic, to really kind of understand your partner and then also to respond in an empathetic way. And there's sleeping together. Now, sleeping together, I'm talking about that literally, sleeping together. There's sex, right? There's love, right? So we have all of these things that are what I call foundations of intimacy, right? And so then, I look at these things from a a symptom perspective, because as I said, not everybody who has a major problem with their relationship is diagnosed as having, one of these conditions. So some of the common conditions, and I put them alphabetically. So for example, with A, I had anger dyscontrol. So a lot of people come back and they're not able to control their anger. It's part of the brain injury and part of the PTSD. So you'll see people getting very upset, having rage over road rage. Someone cuts them off, being very impatient with somebody who really seems to be taking their life for granted and complaining about something that is so unimportant in the scheme of things that they've saw in war. And so there's anger dyscontrol. There's, if going all the way down, there's nightmares, right, from things that happen, and the nightmares is causing sleeplessness, and then people get easily, not just anger, but then there's easily irritated, and then some people get overwhelmed and they withdraw, so they like to spend a lot of time alone. And so you have all these quote unquote symptoms, right? And so when there's nightmares, I start to look at how do these symptoms chip away. So let's take anger, right? If you're in a relationship with me and I'm having unpredictable anger outbursts, right? You can't sometimes trust me because you don't know if you say something or do something, I might fly off the handle. Yeah. You might get to the point, if I'm not just verbally abusive, if I'm physically abusive, you might not feel safe. Or you might, if we have children, you might feel okay, but you might be worried about your children. So that's trust and safety. It's hard to communicate with somebody who's angry, right? And so that's beginning to chip away. Now, I'm having nightmares, right? So I'm having nightmares. I'm up all night. I can't sleep in a bedroom with you. So I'm sleeping someplace else. So we're not sleeping together anymore, right? We may be having sex, right? But that sex, you might notice that I'm not there when I'm having sex with you. So because of my issues, right, I'm detaching. So I may be going through the actions, or I might not be having sex with you because I feel apathetic about everything and I don't really feel like having sex. And I'm on so many medications, and my erection will come up first day. And so why do I want to try if it doesn't work? Yeah. So do you see how each symptom, each symptom, now you might still love me, right? You might still love me even though you can't trust me anymore. You don't feel safe around me. We're not sleeping together. The sex isn't good, but you still love me, right? So each thing, stands on its own. So, I like to show that there's some hope that when we kind of understand that in situations that some of these behaviors, some can be modified and some can't. So, one person says, get mad at the disability, not at your partner. It takes a lot of kind of understanding of what is the person's nature, and I try to when I'm counseling people, and you say was she a good person before they left? Was he a good person? Or is this just an exaggeration? Was he or she an asshole before they left, and now they're just worse? But in the case where you were in a loving relationship and there was no violence, right, and you could trust that person and you felt very safe with them, and now they have a diagnosis of something after they served. It takes a strong person to say, well, it's not me, and it's him, but it's his behavior, because so many people say, they're not the same person. I say they are the same person. They're just behaving differently. And they're behaving differently because of, things that happened. And so if we could help, with your communications, and if we could help, solve some of these issues, that, we could build on what kind of relationship you had before. Yes, it will be different, but I've worked with people who their relationships are actually better, that the injury to their partner actually made them less arrogant, more accessible, more vulnerable, and that the disability improved a relationship that was going downhill before.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the things that you're sharing, because when I first asked this question, the intimacy issues that injured veterans face, I thought body image would be a big part of it. And apparently so much more than that.
Oh, yeah, no, body image is an issue, with serious burns. It's funny, the Aaron, who is in my first video, and I'll be putting up a pilot very, very soon, a pilot, a trailer interview. He didn't have a lot of difficulties coming to terms with his missing limbs and his missing fingers, because he knew it was a risk. So when he got blown up and he was still alive, he was thankful, and he just moved on.
Interesting. So it's all the other things that we don't hear about and we're not prepared for. I'm very struck by very, very simple things that you're mentioning, like sleeplessness, that would really affect my mood, and that would affect my concentration, and that's a result of the nightmare. And I can see that they need a lot of support in so many areas. So we have a break, and we'll come back for the last segment of the show after this break.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. Om Times Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Come heal yourself. What is healing? Healing is nothing but connecting with your all-knowing higher self that already has solutions to all your problems and is always there to guide you. Through this show, we help you to connect with that you are and tap into that innate potential you have to transform your life and fly high. Please join me, your host Monica Goyal, every Sunday, 7 p.m. Pacific. Namaste.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
And welcome back to the last segment of today's show. And we are talking about Love After War, supporting disabled veterans with Dr. Mitchell Tepper. And if you missed today's show introduction, you will know that he has been working with veterans in one form or another since 2006. And in 2013, he worked closely with the Sexual Health and Intimacy Work Group at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center on designing and delivering staff training in providing sexual health care for wounded warriors. And he's working on a documentary today called Making Love After Making War. And in today's show, so far, he's talked about a lot of things, but in the last 15 minutes, he was talking about some of the intimacy issues that injured veterans are dealing with. And this is such important work. And if you want to help stem the tide of divorce, intimate partner violence, and suicide among injured and disabled veterans resulting from failed intimate relationships, one of the very important projects that he's doing is this documentary, and you can go to the website LoveAfterWar.org to contribute. There are some great perks that are being offered based on the level of giving that includes digital downloads of the finished documentary and credits on the film for greater donations. So please check out that website. And of course, Dr. Mitchell Tepper has his own website called drmitchelltepper.com. So I need to ask this question very quickly because we're going to start wrapping up the show. And so, Dr. Mitchell Tepper, I'd like to ask you what you feel is the link between sex and spirit when it comes to your work working with disabled veterans. How do they feel the link between sex and spirit?
It's incredibly strong. I just had a conversation with a veteran struggling with relationship issues that keep breaking down yesterday. And in the conversation, he didn't like going to the psychologist because they just want to give him medicine. And he mentioned, some spiritual issues. And we talked about what we call now, we're beginning to call moral injuries in war. And so people sometimes have to do things, they're commanded to do things, or they do things to save their lives, but they feel very bad about it. And so when they have these moral injuries, these spiritual injuries, they feel like a monster. They feel like they have a dark part on their soul, and they feel, like they're not deserving of love or pleasure because of the horrible things they did. And so when they're, their spirituality is wounded, it could be just as devastating or even more so than all those psychological issues that we talk about that were unique. I'm so glad you asked about that. And in fact, one of the programs I helped the VA do is led by the chaplains and social workers. So the spiritual component is very important to address because war and killing really takes a toll on your spirit.
Yes. So there's the guilt of being alive, having hurt somebody else. So I totally get what you're saying. There's just not simply, but there's survivor's guilt too. If you're in a Humvee and you're the only one who survives and all your buddies died, and you come home and you start to ask that, theological question, why me? And why did I deserve to live? And maybe I should have died. That's also a spiritual question when we start questioning why. And when we are spiritually unsettled, it's unsettling in our intimate relationships. So there's so many layers of all the things that you're talking about.
You just made me think that on my foundations of intimacy, I left out spirituality.
Oh yeah, definitely, because
I talked about love and trust and safety, but I didn't talk about spirituality, and that's something too that I don't know whether it goes on the foundations of intimacy or moral injuries goes under a symptom, but it fits here somewhere.
But it's definitely something that I feel might go under trauma.
Yes.
It goes very well with post-traumatic stress disorder. So there are multiple things that you talked about. So how are these issues currently being addressed right now?
So they're not addressed institutionally. They're addressed here and there within our medical system. So I've been working with or in the past have worked with the Sexual Health and Intimacy Work Group at Walter Reed That's our National Military Medical Center. It's one of it's just a famous one in the United States. So there are a group of doctors and psychologists, nurses, occupational therapists, other rehab professionals who've taken it upon themselves to get more education and training and are working toward being certified as sex therapists. And so that's happening at one of our military hospitals, which we would hope someday would be a model and that would be replicated all over. But right now it's not. There are things happening here and there, but not as extensive, and it's not routine part of care. In the VA, as I said, I worked with some chaplains in my state of Georgia, and that expanded to 3 states, and it was picked up in another one. And so, and now that's more institutionalized, where they're offering these weekend retreats to work on relationship skills and to help, manage the communication and conflict within the context of these, psychological issues I talked about. But yet I talked to this guy yesterday who wasn't aware of them. So, we need to make people aware of the services that are offered. Some VA clinics have sexual health clinics, but once again, they're just a handful of all of them. So we don't, and this isn't to say that the VA or the Department of Defense is worse than the general healthcare system, because it's no different, if you have a heart attack or you have cancer. Routinely, your physician is not addressing your sexual health.
Yeah. One more when yeah, precisely. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so I don't mean to, I'm not pointing fingers. I want to help, the VA and the Department of Defense, and I want to help, general rehab, include this.
Definitely. So I understand. I mean, you're just pointing out what's reality here, that the people fall through the cracks, and the people who are most educated actually get the most help. And that's just part of being aware of what's available out there. And so let's talk about how your documentary will support these people who are falling through the cracks. What will your documentary add?
My goal is to have a documentary that will be broadly distributed. So, I'm shooting for maybe a release in a theater, but then being picked up by Netflix or some other Amazon, so that it would have very broad distribution. So a lot of people will see, like people with injuries, will see these couples telling their stories, and there'll be some expert commentaries too, so people could learn. And how do people maintain or build sexual resiliency? We talk about other types of resiliency, how to, fortify ourselves to maintain our mental health from all these. But how do we fortify ourselves to maintain our sexual health? Or what are some of the successful things these couples are doing that makes them successful, where other people are not doing well? And so the documentary, I think, will add these voices where, there are a lot of documentaries about injured veterans and a lot of news stories, but no one digs into their intimate lives, because, that's taboo, right? To ask somebody, how has this affected your relationship, in and out of the bedroom. So you won't hear those questions being asked anywhere else. So I think it will be voiced to a very taboo issue.
Yeah, I mean, we wonder, and this documentary would actually be able to not just support them, but also educate people at large who are just curious and who would be a lot more empathetic. And the documentary will be able to help people not just be aware, but also, I hope in the documentary, also become aware of more of the resources that they can offer to their friends and people that they know who are affected. So how can listeners help? Yes, sorry.
Well, I think you already told them. Just go to LoveAfterWar.org, LoveAfterWar.org. Learn more, and there's a big contribute button.
Great. Thank you so much for coming onto today's show. I'm very, very grateful to you. When you first came onto the show the first time previously, and you told me that in a few months' time you would launch this documentary, I really didn't understand the scale of what you are embarking on. And, I contributed a little bit of money towards your documentary, but, every single cent I'm sure counts towards this very important and big project that you're doing. So it's really the effort of a collective community out there, and every single one of us can choose to make a stand and make a difference. So do head to LoveAfterWar.org and also check out Dr. Mitchell Tepper's website. That's drmitchelltepper.com, and he has actually some free resources on his website. So be sure to check it out, and you can also find him on Twitter and Facebook. So on Twitter, you can find him on Dr. To spell out the word Dr. T, and on Facebook, you spell out the word Dr. Tepper. So that's Dr. Tepper, Tepper. So thank you once again very, very much. And next week, we are going to have a different guest, and we'll be talking about how to create a positively pleasurable relationship with Carl Frankel. And as we know, life is challenging and relationships more so. And he'll be talking about how to manage the inevitable conflicts in your relationship and co-create a connection that's built on the positive attitude and skillful communicating. So this has been Dr. Martha Lee. Be sure to tune in to Eros Evolution next week. So goodbye and have a great week ahead.